This is Out Loud with Anuvab, a podcast about things that quietly shape outcomes. Decisions, systems, money, work, learning, and the gaps between how we think they work and how they actually do. I'm not here to motivate you. I'm here to think out loud about ideas that are often misunderstood, oversimplified, or, well, ignored because they don't sound exciting. Welcome to the very first episode. Let's begin. Most people think they understand risk, professionals especially. Founders, investors, managers, policy people, consultants, they talk about it confidently, they build frameworks around it. They put it into spreadsheets and slides. And yet, when you look at outcomes, risk keeps blindsiding the same people again and again. Careers stall unexpectedly, businesses collapse despite good fundamentals. Smart financial decisions turn out badly, entire industries get caught off guard by things they technically knew could happen. That gap between knowing about risk and actually handling it well, that's what I want to talk about today. Here's the uncomfortable part. Most people don't misunderstand risk because they're careless. They misunderstand it because modern systems train us to think about risk the wrong way. Let me explain. In most professional environments, risk is treated as a percentage, a probability, a box in a framework, something you manage after the main decision is already made. That approach feels rational. It also quietly strips risk of its most important qualities. Because real risk is not just about likelihood, it's about impact, timing, and your ability to survive the downside. Market data backs this up. In finance, studies consistently show that retail investors and professionals alike are better at estimating probabilities than outcomes. People are reasonably good at saying, this might happen. They are terrible at asking what happens to me if it does. This is why almost 80 to 90% of active traders underperform the market long term. Not because they don't understand risk, but because they underestimate drawdowns and overestimate recovery speed. Most startups don't fail because the idea was impossible. They fail because a single underestimated risk event, cash flow delay, regulatory friction, co-founder conflict, hits before they're ready. Career risk is routinely misjudged. People optimize for short-term stability and ignore long-term fragility, then are shocked when industries shift. Smart people tend to model average outcomes. Risk lives in the edges. Here's the thing. Risk is not about what might happen. Risk is about what happens to you if it does. That sounds obvious, almost childish. But very few people actually think this way. Let me put it plainly. Two people can take the same risk and experience completely different outcomes. Not because the risk changed, but because their position inside the system was different. Risk is contextual. It depends on your buffer, your dependencies, your recovery time, and how many things have to go right for you to be okay. This is why experience alone doesn't protect people. In fact, experience can make risk misjudgment worse, because familiarity breeds confidence, not caution. Professionals start confusing having seen something before with being protected from it. Markets, they don't care. Systems, they don't care. They don't reward confidence. No, they reward resilience. So how do you actually think about risk better? Not in theory, in practice. Here are 4 questions that matter more than any framework. First, if this goes wrong, what specifically breaks for me? Not what's the worst case, but what becomes unstable. Income, reputation, time, optionality. Second, how long can I survive the downside? Most people overestimate recovery speed. Markets, careers, and businesses heal slower than our optimism suggests. Third, what assumptions need to hold for this to work? Risk hides inside assumptions we stop questioning because they've worked before. Fourth, am I taking this risk because it's necessary or because it feels productive? A lot of risk-taking today is just disguised boredom management. When you start asking these questions, something changes. You stop chasing upside narratives. You start respecting downside reality. And ironically, that's when outcomes improve. We live in systems that reward confidence, speed, and storytelling. Risk requires patience, humility, and an uncomfortable level of honesty. That tension isn't going away. So learning to think about risk properly isn't optional anymore. It's a survival skill that's rarely talked about. And the people who learn to live with it early tend to be the ones who stay standing when things stop going according to plan. If you've been thinking about risk differently while listening, keep that thought with you. It tends to matter later, often more than we expect. Thanks for spending the time. This was Out Loud with Anuvab.
I am Anuvab Chatterjee.
I'll see you again in the next episode.